Welcome back to my channel where I'm building a RANS S21 plane. First, a quick update on my EAA chapter. We hosted another Young Eagles event on Saturday, and we only had 3 pilots, so we had to cut down the number of kids to 27, which made it a slightly smaller event. But the kids were happy. We put on a ground school. Had a flight simulator there for the kids to get some hands-on experience in a simulator, and of course served some great food. So it was a good day, weather cooperated, and kids had a great time. So it was a great event. I think I've mentioned this before, that this section of the build on the motor is I'm spending a heck of a lot of time as a first-time builder, spending a heck of a lot of time researching. I come into the garage to work on the plane, and I sit down and I find I spend 2-3 hours, 4 hours on the computer watching some build videos, checking some EAA logs from other builders, and maybe doing some manufacturer research. So for each section of this engine, it's taken a lot of time, but little by little I'm knocking it off. In this episode, I construct and put together the Airbox for the engine, as well as the alt-air cable, and run that through the panel and then out to the Airbox. So with that, let's jump in and start working on the Airbox. Okay, I'm going to rename my channel. It's now going to be Stuck Again. That seems to be the theme of my build here. I get some momentum going and then I get stuck. So we're doing the Airbox. And the very first step is to rivet the nut plates to the inside of the Airbox bottom. And you've got your 8/32 nut plates, piece of cake. We've done this 100 times. We'll just slam on these nut plates. And then you got this bag of solid rivets. Where in the past we've used the 3/32 aluminum rivets, pop rivets, which have been fine. But for some reason they've got you using solid rivets. I've never done a solid rivet in my life. I was just getting good at all the other rivets and getting good at the nut plates. So I'm going to start researching. I don't have a bucking bar or an air hammer. I'm assuming I'm going to have to get some more tools to figure this out. They're little tiny guys. I mean, look at my finger in here. These are little tiny, they're just tiny little guys. You would think I could just use my flathead 3/32 and be in the same place, but there must be a reason RANS wants you to use solid rivets. So let me do some research and take another delay and figure out how I'm going to get these nut plates on. I did get information back from the forum regarding these solid rivets. First, someone mentioned the reason they're solid is that they don't allow any air to pass through, and it's important that, and apparently the aluminum rivets do. So it's important to use a solid in that situation. I did get some recommendations that I could use this squeezer that I've used for dimpling. It's got the dimple bits on right now, but you can put a flathead or a flat bit on there for pressing solid rivets. I would have to order those bits to do it. And then Randy indicated that with a hammer, gentle tapping of a hammer backed against a solid, like the back of a vise solid piece of steel without using a bucking bar, should work just fine. And he said gentle tapping, so it's not indicating that it's going to take a lot. So I think I'm going to go that route. The riveting went so-so. I wouldn't claim it's good. And then the next step is they have you bend all these tabs down to 90 degrees on both the upper and the lower. The next step, they say, is to wrap the side around the outside of the top and the bottom. Use the 2 pre-drilled holes to secure it. Then you're going to transfer drill the number 30s all the way around. Okay, I've match drilled all the holes. I've got a cleat got the holes cleaned up. And it now says to rivet it if you're happy with it. And then I guess you can put some high temperature sealant in here. It says you can if you want. It doesn't say you have to. It says if desired, high temp sealant silicone on the outside of any gap. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we'll get this riveted and move on to the next step. This is where I am with this Airbox. I've riveted the box. I did have to trim it a little bit to have it fit. I did use the red silicone. It says it's optional, so I did use it to fill in these air gaps at the top. And now I'm working on this door, this flap door, and this has been a little bit confusing. If you follow the diagram down, all the movable parts are on the exterior side, not the inside. So this closing door, this is going to be the inside. And then you've got to get the orientation of this one bolt over here. They give you a diagram, and this is looking up or looking at the bottom of it with the valve open. And then I've got to have this clamp, which is on the outside, so that when I pull the cable, let's see if I can do this. As I pull the cable, it's going to pull this door and then open my alt air, which makes sense because the cable is pushed in the closed position, and when you pull it, you're going to open the alt air. So I think I've got it right up to now. Now I've got this end of this cable. I got to figure out how this goes through the clamp, and make sure before I rivet this, I want to make sure I understand how it goes through the clamp and how it attaches here. So I think I've got it up to now. This is the next step right in here, showing the end of this cable. And I'm not 100. They want you to wire tie something. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to wire tie yet, but I'm going to see if I can get this figured out before I rivet this and go to the point of no return. The next step is to take some of the baffle material that you've got. You're going to cut it in sections, and it's going to, I guess, cover all four sides of the entrance to the airbox. The side angle pieces have to angle and come out and match the bottom piece. The bottom piece apparently is going to have these four pieces that are going to lay this way on it, which will help shape it coming in the front. And this is just all riveted, and you use this brace material, support material, to create the sandwiching between the material and the box. Well, I just finished doing this baffle, what they call the baffle seal material, and I realized I made a mistake, and I'm going to see what I need to do to correct it. It's I think it's an easy mistake. In the manual, they show the baffle seal material here, here, and here, and these are all separate pieces, which is what I did. And I cut these hinges, or these baffle supports, kind of as the directions said, with riveting. These stick out that way, and the rest, let's flip it over this way. And I've got the bar there. So I think I cut all of the support material correctly. But then in the instructions, it says cut to length as needed to complete the seal in one piece with an overlap at the top. This doesn't show one piece. This shows all these separate pieces. But I guess what you're supposed to do is take this baffle material and have one piece and have it overlap here, and then rivet it into those bar strips as one piece. So I don't know if I've got enough material. I may have to order another material, or maybe I can glue these seams with a, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, since I was going to get a new baffle seal that was one piece, I decided to play around with this a little bit. I used some contact cement and some baffle seal strips to try and close this gap up to see if that would work. Well, I just saw Derek Kenny's baffling seal on his Airbox, and he does a real nice job, but he has 4 separate strips as well. It's not one strip, and I trust his build a lot, so I'm going to hold off. I may take these off. They're stuck. They're pretty good. This contact cement holds pretty good, but he also trims these out. I think it's out about 1.5 inches around, so you don't use this full flap. So for now, as ugly as this is, this was just kind of experimental, but I'm really surprised at how stuck these are. So that contact cement is pretty grippy on this, so we'll see. I did attach the Airbox to the bottom of the fuel servo, and I was reviewing EA builder's log. There's a gentleman, Pat Hatch, that has some experience building. He's got a nice builder's log, and he also has these as 4 separate pieces. So I'm feeling more comfortable that this does not have to be one solid piece. And whether I leave these or remove these little securing straps, I'll figure out when I get my cowl on. But it looks like I don't have to change that. Then they want you to put the air filter in and put the alt air door on the bottom. This little hole in the door that opens and closes and attaches to your alt cable. This is the pin that's supposed to go through here. Diagram clearly shows it coming through, but the hole that RANS has drilled is not big enough, so I assume I have to drill it. It doesn't say anything about drilling it, but again, making one of those assumptions. That the cable threading has a second nut on it, and it's supposed to be so it's adjustable, but the threads, as they come through this clamp, only give me enough room to put one nut. I had to take this nut out in order to have enough thread to catch this nut. So do I just discard this nut? It doesn't say anything about it. The other thing is the way this cable is, it just slides in here, and if it can just pull out. If I open the door, okay, we'll try and continue here. If I open the door, you can see this is just a housing that goes over the end of the cable, and that this whole housing can come out. Now the instructions do show a wire tie, but am I supposed to wire tie around this rigid part and then wire tie around here to kind of hold this cable in? And then of course this end goes through, I've forgotten what this is called, and then you need a thin washer down here. If you use a thick washer, it's going to be too tight and press against the mechanism that opens and closes. You have to use the 1/4 thin washer down there. And then I'm going to attach the cover, put the air filter in, attach the cover, and then run the cable. And I should be good on this. I need to run my alternate air cable, and I noticed I had written a note to myself, drill after installing my ignition boxes. So the hole, which is slightly below the starter solenoid and above the ignition box, is not drilled. So it's supposed to be drilled to a 5/16. So we'll get that drilled and then get my alt air cable installed. According to the manual, the hole for the alt air cable is 2.1 inches above this bolt, directly above it. So I marked it here, and I'm gonna have to get up in there and drill that somehow. And I checked for clearance on my other end, and it's 2.1 inches above this bolt here. Well, I'm not giving you a good view, but it's clear above it, so I'm good to come through my firewall at that location. I've run the alt air cable through the firewall and the grommet and the sub panel, and I've got it down. This trike mount kind of gets in the way, but it looks like there's no bend. I went up and operated it. It seems to work pretty smooth. And then it goes through here and then attaches. But I still have another, I don't know, 1.5 feet of cable to run. So I'm going to run it all the way through, and then you've got to trim the cable, trim the outside coating to one length, and then trim the inside wire to a second length to make it fit. But it does look like this will work. Here's the final of my alt air cable and alt air box. Pull out. Seems to be a nice smooth function. I did put a little mark there to indicate when it's out all the way, but it's smooth 2-finger operation. And then as I come down underneath, it gets hard to get under here. I wire tied the cable in here, checked with the forum, and I didn't really understand the wire tie. If someone's got a better solution, let me know. I gave it a good hard twist against this cable, and then just wrapped it around this bracket and put the wire tie loop in here. And it comes through, Loctite here, a little bend in there just in case, to keep it out of the way from interfering here. And in case this screw comes out, the wire should stay in there. There's a little gap here. I was concerned. I tightened these screws down as hard as I could with a nice Husky screwdriver, and there's a little gap, and it's pushing against the rubber part of the air filter, so I'm assuming that's the way it's supposed to be. It doesn't really close anymore, and the air filter's up in there, so I'm assuming that's correct. So moving on. Well, that's a good place to stop. That Airbox took me 19.8 hours to build and install. That brings the project to date to 1198.7 hours. In the next episode, I install the parking brake, the heater cable, and I get started on the various sensors and wiring for more engine components. So with that, thanks a lot for watching, and remember, dream it and just build it.